October 1944, Lorraine, France. The fields outside Mézières-les-Metz, the Third Army had been grinding against Metz for weeks. This wasn't the war Patton knew. His war was speed, movement, and tanks rolling 50 miles a day, and Germans running ahead of them. This was something else. Metz was a fortress city ringed by concrete and steel that had been built and rebuilt since the Franco-Prussian War. The Germans inside it weren't retreating. They were waiting. And in the fields between the American lines and the fortress walls, men were dying. Private First Class Daniel Marsh, 22 years old, Knoxville, Tennessee, was a combat medic with the 5th Infantry Division. He'd been in France since August, had crossed the Moselle with his unit, had treated wounds in ditches and shell craters and half-destroyed farmhouses. He knew what the job looked like and what it cost. On the morning of October 12th, Marsh's company was pinned down in a drainage ditch, 50 yards from a collapsed stone wall. German positions held the wall. American positions held the ditch. The space in between was a killing ground. A corporal named Vincent Perez, 24, from San Antonio, took a round through the shoulder at 0840. He went down hard. He was conscious, calling out. Marsh heard him. He looked at his medic's bag, looked at the white brassard with the red cross on his arm, looked at the 50 yards between him and Perez. He went. He was halfway across when the second shot came. Not at Perez, at Marsh. The round caught him in the left thigh. He went down, dragged himself forward, reached Perez, got a tourniquet on him, got him stabilized. Then he lay there and waited. Another medic, Private Arthur Donnelly, 20, from Worcester, Massachusetts, saw it happen. He started across. The third shot was meant for Donnelly. I missed by 6 inches. Donnelly made it. Got both men behind the wall. But the pattern was clear to every American soldier watching from the ditch. The sniper wasn't shooting at soldiers. He was waiting for the Red Cross. Sergeant First Class Hugh Carver, 31, Decatur, Illinois, had been in the ditch watching all of it. He'd been in this war long enough to understand what he was seeing. This wasn't a sniper picking targets of opportunity. The man had waited. Let Marsh get halfway across before he fired. Let Donahue begin crossing before he tried again. He was targeting the medics specifically, deliberately. Carver filed a report that evening. He was precise. Times, distances, descriptions of the shot patterns. 2 attempts on medics in a single engagement, both clearly identified by their Red Cross brassards, both fired upon after the sniper had passed on multiple shots at combat soldiers. The report went to the company, then battalion, then regiment. And then, because of what happened 3 days later, it went somewhere it might not have otherwise gone. On October 15th, a German prisoner was brought in during a night action. He was a Feldwebel, a staff sergeant, from the 462nd Volksgrenadier Division holding Metz. During interrogation, he said something that the intelligence officer flagged immediately and passed up the chain without waiting for morning. He said a standing order had been issued by a sector commander to his snipers. Priority targets in the American lines. Not officers, not radio operators, not tank commanders. Medics. The logic, as the prisoner explained it, was coldly practical. Kill the medics, and the wounded die. Kill the wounded, and the fear spreads faster than bullets. It was a force multiplier, an order to make suffering into a weapon. The prisoner's account was consistent with Carver's report. Consistent with reports from 2 other companies in the sector over the preceding week. This was a policy. The intelligence report, attached to Carver's field account and the corroborating company reports, landed on General George Patton's desk at 3rd Army Headquarters on the evening of October 17th. Patton read it once, set it down, picked it up again. His aide, Captain Charles Codman, was in the room. He later described what happened next. Patton said nothing for nearly 2 minutes, just read. Then he set the report down flat on the desk and looked up. The story of what Patton did next has never been told in full, not in the official histories, not in the memoirs. It lived for years in the unit records of the 5th Infantry Division and in the accounts of the men who were there. If this is the kind of story you've been looking for, the ones that show what this war really meant, subscribe. We find them every week. Codman had seen Patton angry before, had seen him rage at officers in front of their men, had seen him throw papers and slam tables, and use language that would have cleared a church. He'd also seen him cold. The quiet that came when something had genuinely cut through the theater and hit the real man underneath. This was the second kind. Patton looked at Codman. "Get me the 20 Corps commander tonight. Major General Walton Walker, 55 years old, commanding the 20 Corps, arrived at 3rd Army headquarters by 2100. He found Patton standing at a map table with the intelligence report and Carver's field account laid out side by side. Patton didn't open with a greeting. A German sector commander in the Metz forts has issued a standing order to his snipers to target American medics. He put his finger on the map. In this sector, it's been happening for at least a week. We have multiple confirmed incidents, a prisoner account, and field reports from 3 separate companies." Walker read the documents. His expression didn't change. "What do you need from me, sir?" "I need 2 things," Patton said. "First, I need to know who issued the order. Name, rank, unit. Get me every piece of intelligence we have on the command structure inside those forts. I want to know which commander runs which sector." "Yes, sir." "Second, I want to talk to Colonel Ryan. Lieutenant Colonel James Ryan, 40, from Baltimore, commanded the artillery regiment supporting the 5th Infantry Division sector. Ryan arrived within the hour." Patton explained the situation. He didn't editorialize. He laid out the facts the same way he'd read them from the report. Then he said, "I want you to understand something, Colonel. What I'm going to tell you is not retaliation. It is not revenge. It is a military response to a war crime designed to degrade our medical capacity and terrorize our wounded." Ryan waited. The sector where this order originated is here." Patton indicated the map. "The command position for that sector, based on our intelligence, is in the northeastern section of the Metz fortifications, Fort Coulou. Every artillery piece you can bring to bear on that position, I want to register on it. Not tomorrow, tonight." Ryan looked at the map. "That's inside the fortress ring, sir. Heavy concrete. We'd need sustained fire to do any real crimes. I know what it takes." Patton said, "Do it anyway. And I want the surrounding approaches, the supply routes, the communication lines running out of that sector. I want them cut. If he's issuing orders to his snipers, I want to make sure those orders are the last ones that leave that position." "Yes, sir." But Patton wasn't finished. He sat down. That alone was unusual enough to make Codman pay attention. Patton thought better standing up. When he sat, it meant he was working through something carefully. "There's something else," he said. "Every medic in that sector is going to keep treating the wounded. That's not going to change. But I want every sniper team in the 5th Division's area dedicated to counter-sniper work. I want German snipers hunted, not as a combat mission, as a specific priority mission with no other objective." He looked at Walker. The German commander who issued this order wanted to use fear as a weapon. He wanted our medics to be afraid to cross open ground. He wanted wounded men lying there because nobody would go to them." His voice was level, precise. "I wanted to work the other way. I want every German soldier in that sector to understand what happens when you declare open season on men with red crosses on their arms." Walker nodded. "Understood, sir. One more thing." Patton picked up the prisoner's statement. "This fell Webel, who told us about the order. He gave us information that may save American lives. Make sure he's treated accordingly. Not because I'm feeling generous, but because soldiers who do the right thing should see what the right thing gets them." Walker and Ryan left together. Codman, finishing notes, looked up to find Patton still at the desk. still reading the original report. "You know what gets me?" Patton said, not quite to Codman, not quite to himself. A medic going across open ground to reach a wounded man. He knows somebody's out there with a rifle. He knows, and he goes anyway. A pause. That's not courage in the ordinary sense. That's something else. You'd need a different word for it. He closed the report. "Make sure Ryan understands. Sustained fire all night. The guns opened up at 2200. It wasn't surgical. Patton hadn't intended it to be." The artillery walked across the northeastern sector of the Metz fortress ring, in a systematic pattern, hitting the command positions, the supply routes, and the communication lines. Fort Culo absorbed rounds for 4 hours straight. In the ditch outside Metz, Sergeant Hugh Carver heard it from 2 miles away. The rumble was continuous, like weather that wouldn't stop. He knew it wasn't a standard fire mission. Standard fire missions didn't go on for 4 hours, didn't maintain that rhythm, that deliberate sustained hammering at the same coordinates. He didn't know why. Why was happening? Not yet. He found out 3 days later, when word came down through the company commander in that particular informal way. That word always traveled in the army. Not in order, not in briefings, between soldiers in the way soldiers talked. Something about the medics, something about a German order, something about what Patton had done when he read the report. Carver, who had written that original field account on the night of October 12th, sat with that information for a long time. He'd been in the army for 4 years. He'd been in combat for 8 months. He thought he understood what generals did and didn't do with company-level field reports. He hadn't expected this. The counter-sniper campaign in the 5th Division sector lasted 11 days. Patton had assigned it to men who were good at it. Not just good shots, good hunters, men who understood patience, who could read terrain, who could wait in a position for 6 hours without moving and then be ready when the moment came. Staff Sergeant William Taft, 28, from rural Maine, had been hunting deer since he was 12. He'd been given a sniper's rifle in North Africa and had never relinquished it. He commanded a small team of 3 men and operated with minimal direction and maximal authority. Find the German snipers in the sector. Eliminate them. He later described what the 11 days looked like. You spend most of your time not moving, watching, learning their patterns. A German sniper in a fixed position develops habits. Same observation time in the morning. Same window he looks through. You find the pattern, and you work with it. He found the first man on day 2. A position in a ruined farmhouse 400 yards north of where Marsh and Donnelly had been hit. The position had been occupied for days. The Germans left signs if you knew what to look for. A slight change in the sill of a window, an almost imperceptible worn path in the frost. Taft took 1 shot. The position was empty after that. He found 3 more in the following 9 days. Not all of them could be confirmed as the specific men who had targeted medics. That wasn't the point. The point was what Patton had told Walker. The German commander had used fear as a weapon. The answer to that wasn't just artillery. It was making the fear work in the other direction. By late October, something had changed in the sector. The medical reports noticed it first. Casualty evacuation times improved. Medics were moving more freely. The pauses, the moments when a wounded man lay in the open and nobody moved because the ground felt wrong. Those pauses were shorter. Daniel Marsh, who had taken the round through his thigh on October 12th, was back with his unit on October 28th, after 2 weeks in a field hospital. He came back to the same ditch, the same company, the same 50-yard of open ground. He found out what had happened while he was gone, the same way Carver had found out. Through the informal flow of information between soldiers. He didn't say much when he heard it. He was a medic. He thought about things in practical terms. What it meant in practice was that the next time he had to cross open ground to reach a wounded man, there was a better chance he'd make it back. That mattered. The German commander who had issued the order targeting medics was never conclusively identified. The intelligence had narrowed it to the northeastern sector of Metz, almost certainly a staff officer of the 462nd Volksgrenadier Division. But the fortress held for another 3 weeks, and by the time it fell on November 22nd, the command records were incomplete, damaged by fire and by the chaos of the final German defense. Patton never spoke publicly about the artillery mission of October 17th in connection with the medic targeting. In his memoirs, the artillery actions of that period are recorded as routine counter-battery and command interdiction missions, which, technically they were, but the men who were in the 5th Division sector in October 1944 knew what had happened. They knew because the timing was too precise to be coincidence, because the fire had lasted too long and hit too specifically to be routine, because the counter-sniper mission had started the same week and had been given resources that company-level sniper work didn't usually get. They knew because men who treat the wounded and then get shot for it are exactly the kind of thing that made Patton move fast and hit hard and not explain himself to anyone. Sergeant Carver kept his copy of the field report he'd submitted on October 12th. He brought it home to Decatur in 1945, folded inside his field jacket. His daughter found it in a box in the attic decades later. She had it framed. She told the story to a local newspaper in 1997 on the occasion of a veterans' reunion. She described what her father had told her about that period in Lorraine, about the medics and the snipers, and the night the guns hadn't stopped. "My father wasn't a sentimental man," she said, "but he told that story every time someone asked him what the war was really like. Not the big battles, not the famous ones. This one. October 1944, outside Metz, when a general nobody had reported to personally decided that targeting medics was something he was going to answer." She paused in the interview. He said Patton understood something a lot of people don't. That how you fight says something. That there are things you do in a war and things you don't do, and the line between them matters, not because of a convention or a regulation, but because of what you are. She looked at the framed report. He said when those guns started up at night, he didn't know why yet, but he knew it was the right answer to whatever question was being asked. She folded her hands. "I think about the medics, the ones who kept going across that open ground even when they knew someone was aiming at the Red Cross. My father wrote about them in that report. He tried to get their names right, tried to get the times right, because he wanted somebody to know what they'd done." A pause. He just didn't expect anybody to do anything about it. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from, and whether anyone in your family served in it. We read everyone. And if you want more stories about the men and decisions that don't make the history books, the ones that happened in the field, between the battles, in the moments that showed what people were made of, subscribe. Those are the stories we're here to tell.